I was 15 on the day that it happened. I had been at a friend's house studying, as I usually did on Wednesdays. It had gone well, nothing at all out of the ordinary. Just another quiet afternoon in small-town suburbia. I started to make my way home at a little before 6. I was exhausted from the numbers and letters and just wanted to relax. It had been a long day and I looked forward to getting my chance to kick back and just not worry about any of it. School was getting harder and to be honest I didn't care for any of it. I got on my bike and made my way throughout the familiar town that I called home. It wasn't much of a town, but it was quiet, and I liked quiet. I could never have lived in a city and I was okay with that. It seemed like there were plenty of small towns in the world and even this one didn't seem half bad. There wasn't the loud hustle of the larger cities that seemed to take over a location's identity. Just me and the streets. I pulled my bike into the driveway and dropped it in front of the garage at home not long after. I was just ready to sit down and watch some television or curl up with a book. It had been a long day, and an even longer week. I was so ready for the weekend. Finally there would be some rest to be had. My grades were far from perfect, despite me trying as best as I could. I simply didn't have the interest in academic life that would allow me to get the grades that I needed to succeed in my life. I wanted more from life than just a paycheck. I wanted to actually make my way through life and enjoy what I did. I opened the door to the quaint little townhouse that I called home and yelled for my mom or dad, neither of whom answered. I shut the door behind me and sat my bag down on the floor as I continued to make my way through the house yelling their names. Odd. That was unusual because dinner was usually right around this time. They both got off work a little after 5, and the house was only about 15 minutes from the small real estate office they both worked at. I didn't smell the usual aroma of whatever Dad was making, and that was also weird considering the time. I called out for them again but received nothing in response. That was when I heard a haunting sound. There was a light thud and then the unmistakable sound of laughter. But it wasn't the laughter of my parents. Nor was it any kind of laughter that I had ever encountered before. This laughter was wrong and it found a way inside of my head. That sinister sound crawled up my spine and burrowed its haunting melody deep into my mind. The sound was one that I would never forget, no matter how hard I wished I could. I made my way down the hall and I knew this was all very wrong. A presence was here. An entity that didn't belong in this place. Or any place for that matter. I could feel myself trembling as I moved forward through my home. I made my way slowly to the room where my parents usually sat, the laugh still echoing throughout the chambers of my mind. I knew whatever was inside of that room was terribly wrong. I should have turned and run then. But I needed to know. Deep down inside of me I understood that nothing was ever going to be the same. I didn't know how to explain it. It was just obvious to me. I knew that the moment that I opened the door that nothing would ever go back to the way that things were. Wet tears slid down my cheeks as I opened the door and revealed a horror unlike anything I could have prepared myself for. In the center of the room laid my parents, not quite dead, but they soon would be. Blood sprayed and poured forth from dozens of open wounds and it looked as if someone had tried to remove their insides with a spoon. They let out a terrifying sound as their bodies spasmed in shock. The walls were painted red. I stood there in shock as my parents both locked eyes with me. Their eyes pleading with me for help. Begging me to make the pain stop. But I could do nothing. Even if I had the courage to. It was still here. It was. A red glow? An orb? A massive orb? It was a bright red. I didn't know how else to describe it. It radiated a bright orange glow and was smiling with teeth. So many teeth. The sharpest teeth I had ever seen. Dripping with the blood of my parents and clearly desperate for more.